I am Margot Johnson. I am born and raised in Marin County, California, which is just outside San Francisco. And I was introduced to environmental justice and caring for the environment, climate change, and all that encompasses due to the environment that I've grown up in. I've been incredibly lucky to be near the Marin Headlands and the Muir Woods, which is a redwood forest. So I've been surrounded by nature and the environment. And in the past 10 to 15 years, Northern California and California in general has been ravaged by wildfires. And seeing that devastation has really brought the emergency and like the urgency needed for environmental change. After graduating Bryn Mawr, and throughout my time at Bryn Mawr, I was involved with my local Quaker Friends meeting. And I was lucky enough to grab a job at FCNL and continue in lobbying, and environmental justice was something that I had cared about, but not known to the extent that I know it now. And I've been just incredibly grateful to have that connection and be able to make some kind of change and organize lobby visits and meet some wonderful people like Anthony. But I am just gonna start my talk. I'm gonna share my screen.
I think Carol Francis have to make you, oh good, you've done it, right?
Yeah. There. I was just trying to logistically figure it out. Can everyone see what my screen? Wonderful. So, what is environmental justice? So, if you haven't studied this issue, it can seem like a very broad and very personal or opinion-based definition, where a lot of people have different ideas about what environmental justice is, and honestly, what environmental injustice is. But I'm going to go off of the definition that the FCNL uses. It's up for conversation and discussion, of course, but I feel like this is a good encompassing statement. So I'm just going to read out. It's what is environmental justice? It is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So I think that it's, if we sit with this idea and we think about our history and our history of environmental change and environmental activism, you can find many differences in how this issue has been dealt with. Historically, marginalized groups by race, color, national origin, and income have not been consulted in these issues. I have heard many stories of people who are living near wooded area or wonderful places that they believe should be preserved, but without any consultation from them, they become bulldozed and developed and used for other means. In the Bay Area specifically, we have many factories in Richmond, California, which the people of Richmond were not consulted with. but they are the ones who have increased rates of asthma and cancer, and they have no recourse to sue or to claim issue, because they aren't, there's just no legal way to do that currently. So I find that this can be, that talking about this issue can be helpful if I kind of talk about like what can be done. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the bill that I'm working on right now. So it's the Environmental Justice for All Act. It's been introduced in the House and the Senate currently. And one of the most important aspects of this is that it provides constituents with a mechanism for building support for environmental justice across all aspects of the government. It has 3 different sections, but in terms of talking about environmental justice and talking about having recourse and meaning behind when there's environmental injustice, this bill would amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Clean Air Act to label environmental degradation as a means of discrimination. So people who live in environmentally unjust areas, especially people of marginalized communities, will have a smaller, a little bit more of a voice and a ability to have recourse legally to sue the local government, to sue the state, or even sue the companies that are building these factories. It also has something called the Just Transition Advisory Committee. Currently, the bill is only co-sponsored by Democrats in the House and the Senate. But the Just Transition Advisory Committee is something that I and many other in the Advocacy Corps, because we are spread throughout the country in many different states, many of us still in college, and in Republican-led and majority states. And this is the committee is made up of many different experts and people involved in clean air or green energy that can help mining towns or industrialized areas transition away from fossil fuels and move towards green energy. And that is one of the things that we use when we're talking to Republican senators or congresspeople, as saying, we are not leaving you in the lurch. We want to help you transition. We want to give you these resources. And many would get grants or environmental, I hate the word, the discounts is not the right word, but tax incentives, I think would be the right sentences. I have a little bit more of like a one-pager that goes more into each of these sections if anyone wants to see it afterwards, or I can put it up on the screen. But I think that this is a good little summary for right now. But this is the important question. How can we make a difference? What can we do about this issue? And for me, from what I've understood, in-person lobby visits, or as of right now, Zoom lobby visits, is the most effective form of advocacy, especially within constituents. So as a constituent of California as a constituent of Marin County, if I speak to my local or state representatives, telling them my story of how the wildfires have impacted my state, or I have friends and family members that have been affected by and developed asthma from being close to these factories. It makes a personal connection and takes this bill out of being just one of many bills in a subcommittee that they hear every day to a personal story of this bill will help this person, which I think really changes everything away from just the abstract into the real. As Anthony mentioned, I am facilitating a lobby visit at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Monday, the 21st, with Dianne Feinstein's office, specifically one of her legislative correspondents, a woman named Freda. And I'd be happy to send anyone Zoom link, Zoom information about it, or a little bit more about what we're doing. But I am going, and Anthony and some others are going to be advocating for this bill, because at this moment, Dianne Feinstein has not co-sponsored this legislation, while Alex Padilla, our other senator, has, and many others have. I think in the House it's about 100, and in the Senate I think it's about 40, but that's not exact numbers. I can also send along that bill information on the congressional website if anyone wants to see that. Someone just wrote in the chat. Oh, thank you, Anthony. He put a link about the Environmental Justice Act in the chat. Okay, so I wanted to leave quite a bit of time for questions because I understand that this bill is complicated. I can also share my screen and show some of those like one pagers or the actual congressional website about the bill if anyone wants to see that. But I thought I'd leave a little bit of time. I know that was a lot of information also. So just let me know if you.
Yeah, thank you, Margot. If you could put in the chat maybe the Zoom link for people who want to participate in that lobbying, that might be useful also. Carol Francis has a hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, I in the chart that you just showed, it showed the lobby visits, in-person lobby visits being the most effective, and the least is visits by lobbyists. Now, I'm not sure the difference, and visits by lobbyists sounds pretty in person. Obviously, a lobbyist visiting and who can donate a whole lot of money, visit from what we usually think of as the corporate lobbyist, is going to generate a whole lot of pressure. So what do you mean by visits by lobbyists as opposed to in-person lobbying?
So so I think what I'm trying to say is that lobbyists and in-person lobbying don't contain necessarily the same people. I am an organizer who works for a lobbying group. I'm not a professional lobbyist. Anthony and anyone who would join me on Monday are constituents of California. They are not lobbyists. And so when they join me for a lobby visit, they're speaking as constituents of that area, as constituents of the state, not as lobbyists. So they're bringing a non-financial, non-monetary pressure that I think is more personal and more effective through their stories and through their presence. With lobbyists, especially lobbyists with money and interest, most congressional people, they care about those people because they want donations, but they get many of them. So it's much harder as a lobbyist with a lot of money to put that pressure to the right people. Because you can offer them that money, but they have other people they could go to. And that other lobbyists, professional lobbyists, are also trying to get in their pockets. So it puts a lot of more of a, oh, well, that institution cares about it, but do my constituents care about it? Are they going to get me reelected? So I think there's more of a difference in that. Anyone else?
I had, I guess, a little bit of testimony about a couple of things and a question. Ava and I live in the city of Los Angeles, right near Culver City, and they renamed the street recently, that year or two ago, that we live on Obama Boulevard. But if people have been on that street, they may know that where Obama Boulevard and where, I should say, Martin Luther King Boulevard starts, it comes out of Obama Boulevard near La Brea. And there and right outside our house, there are two civil rights, I don't know what to say, installations, art installations. The one at King Boulevard is about Martin Luther King, and the one right near us says "Walk a mile in your shoes," and it has statuary, essentially, of the shoes and photographs of the shoes of many, many different civil rights leaders. And it was under construction for a long time, and it said a joint project of the LA Cultural Affairs Department and the some federal agency related to the air and water. And it turns out that there was a civil rights legislation already in, I think, either the Clean Air or Clean Water Act. And because those spots actually vented sewer gas and filled the air with noxious fumes, there was a lawsuit that was brought under that aspect of existing civil rights legislation in one of the environmental bills to repair that, because it was basically concentrated in African-American neighborhoods in Los Angeles. And in part of the process of doing that repair on the sewer system, they also installed these two amazing art installations. I think that the connection of racism and environmentalism and environmental justice actually has very practical effects all the time for people. The question I wanted to raise was the importance of what you said about offering incentives to communities to solve some of these problems, because when I was growing up, when I was about your age, there was a lot of concern about Appalachia. And in particular, there were very, very big movements in places that are now extremely reactionary in their voting patterns, like West Virginia. And in West Virginia, then there was a huge movement about black lung and its effect on minors, but also about the bulldozers and the destruction of communities physically to create these mines. And there was a lot of movement, a lot of struggle from those communities, and now most of them are mired in, extremely reactionary politics, because I think there was a failure to really figure out a way to engage with those people in a way that put their economic wherewithal together with the environmental. So I was wondering if you could say more about that aspect of the bill and of the organizing. Thank you. And I see Anthony has a hand up. We'll get to him.
Yeah. What specifically, like, what is the question specifically that you're asking? Are you asking about Like,
in terms of the incentives to communities to engage in environmental protection and environmental justice work, to empower communities really to have some economic wherewithal that does not have the same negative impacts on the environment. If there's more about that in the bill.
yes. So I'm actually going to share my screen because there to address that issue, because this is a one-pager about the Environmental Justice for All Act that I can put in an email or pass along to Anthony. And at the bottom, it has a couple of key features that I wasn't able to talk about all of them. But if you look right here at the National Environmental Policy Act, it requires federal agencies to provide early and meaningful community involvement before building. And there's also the part where there's the Environmental Justice Grants Program, which authorizes $75 million annually for grants to support research, education, outreach, development, and implementation of projects to address the environmental and public health issues. And the reason I'm highlighting both of those is to say that part of this bill is to make sure that communities have a say in especially when projects or factories or things like that are going to be built or implemented. So it's making it so that before things are built, the company and the federal government have to research and have to understand what the future community impact would be, like how like that amount of chemicals or that amount of toxic air and smoke inhalation will affect that community. Like, what is the radius of effect to the local community, and just make sure that there is written and set in stone understanding between the community, the factory, and the federal government about what is being built. And also kind of back, like there's this cumulative impacts section where you have to requires the consideration of cumulative impacts in permitting decisions under the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act. And it ensures that permits will not be issued to a project that cannot demonstrate a reasonable certainty of no harm to human health. So making sure that the community knows and the federal government understands what is happening, and that there should be no certainty. There should be certainty that there's not going to be any human impact. I hope that answered at least part of your question.
Yeah, I see the last one too. You have the fair and just transition. That's not what I was thinking about in terms of people having other economic activities instead of the ones that are so destructive.
Absolutely. There would be a lot. Something that Biden himself has been talking about is making it so that a lot of workers or jobs that have been in fossil fuels are able to transition into green and clean energy without losing their economic or like their ability to have a job and to provide for their families. So instead of maybe being a miner or being involved in a oil or gas pipeline, they'll be able to develop clean and green energy. And the training that would be involved, the incentive, like economic incentives to be able to do that will be a key aspect. Anthony?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Margot. I want to circle back first to what Carol Francis said. I think she was a little skeptical about the influence of lobbyists. And I think lobbyists combined with big money do have an inordinate influence.
Yeah.
And so that kind of lobbying is something that can only be opposed, as the old saying goes, organized money can only be countered by organized people. So we need to have the numbers. And when we do, we can make a difference, even if there's a small number of people with big money who are opposing us. I know that from experience here in my city in Pasadena. We work for housing justice because we have such a broad base of support. We can counter the wealthy homeowners who have such an inordinate influence on our elected officials. I just want to lift up that our city of Los Angeles is a case study in environmental injustice. We've had someone come to ICUJP to talk about efforts that have been made to empower Latino communities whose where there are oil wells and toxic sites like the Exide battery disposal place. And so I think it's so important that these communities have the legal means to fight back against being sacrifice zones in our city and elsewhere. So I want to commend this bill to you all, and I hope that some of you can join us on Monday when we meet with Feinstein's aide and see if we can get her on board.
Thank you. I'm just putting my email in the chat. If anyone wants to email me in order, if they want to join on Monday and get that Zoom link, I'm going to send it out to everyone who is going to attend later today. I just wanted to pass that along to everyone. And I appreciate you bringing that up, Anthony, in terms of how a lot of big cities, Richmond and Los Angeles, were never considered in terms of environmental impact for a very long time when they were being built or when they were being grown, like when they were expanding. And now we're facing those repercussions to an extreme extent.
Yeah, I see a couple more hands, Carol Francis and Lucy. I did want to mention locally, there's a coalition called, I think, STAND. It's Stand Together Against Neighborhood Drilling, because LA is a huge actual drilling site for extraction. Carol Francis and then Lucy.
Right. Lucy, go first because I've already spoken.
Oh, thank you, Carol Francis. I wanted to refer back to what Antoinette showed us last week. And it seems that this bill will help facilitate those people. It is a federal bill, and it will help those people who need the pipeline for jobs have new opportunities. Do I understand this correctly? Antoinette, maybe, or whoever else, or Margot.
I mean, I don't know exactly what Antoinette was speaking about, but in terms of the Just and Fair Transition Committee, it is trying to ensure that states such as Virginia or Pennsylvania, which have relied a lot on that kind of fossil fuel based economies, will be able to transition away from that without losing much in terms of economy, but also in terms of jobs.
I mean, this is really what we need, right? Am I right about this?
Yes. I feel like some senators and congresspeople might not know about this bill, or it might have kind of flown a little bit under the radar because it was introduced around the same time as Biden's infrastructure bill. And some people were confused. I think some people were a little confused because this is its own bill. It's separate from any environmental issues that Biden's legislation, like endorsed legislation, would affect. But I think that this bill is different enough in terms of how it would amend the Clean Air Act and the Civil Rights Act, and the Just and Fair Transition Committee, which would address some issues that I don't think the infrastructure or just putting money into green energy would address. Carol, do you want to mention something?
Yeah, Carol Francis. Yeah,
Sorry.
I once had this African American turn around to me and show me this page in a book that was a quote from some, I believe, not a government person, but a corporate person, saying that the best place to dump carcinogenic and other polluting things are in Black neighborhoods because they don't have the ability to fight back. It seems like this bill would really be supported by the growing Native American anti-pipeline community. And are you reaching out to them to join your lobbying visits? And is this visit Monday virtual or physically in her Santa Monica office or West LA office, whatever it is?
So I have reached out a little bit, but if anyone knows like a specific group or organization that you think I should reach out to in terms of that Native American pipeline justice, please put in the chat or email me personally so that I can reach out to them more directly. I think that's my issue in terms of I don't have someone directly that I can reach out to, but I would love to get more involved in it and bring this bill to their attention more directly. In terms of it's going to be virtual, so I am the person facilitating it, so it is coming from I am a Bay Area person, so I am some people who are joining me are going to be from the Bay Area, but I have a lot of people from LA, Orange County, Santa Monica who are also joining, because Feinstein is a California delegate. I'm trying to represent people from throughout California, and it is going to be online as a Zoom meeting. So if you email me, I can get you the Zoom link so you can join. And I just would be happy to have some numbers. It's always important to be able to show the office that people are passionate about this issue. And even if you are going to be speaking specifically on the issue. But yeah, it is this Monday that is coming up, by the way. It is President's Day. Fernando, I think you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, first of all, I like to, I appreciate what you're doing, because this is one of important work, at least in terms of environment. But the problem I see is that, many laws are already there, in terms of air control, air pollution and so forth. Many of these laws are already there. But it seems to me that this big corporation like DuPont and this Exxon company is the one who really violate many of these rules, and so we're left, it's like you're fighting the giant, but at the same time they're the one who really violate the environmental issues in terms of the emission that the United contribute to the pollution is 25%, which is one of the largest in the world. But at the same time, like Feinstein and many other politicians also supported many of this corporation. And so it's like we're, here we are in the local, we're fighting many of this environmental justice and so forth, but look like they're also supporting this big corporation. And so how do we resolve many of these issues? Because simply, the big impact, we're not even signing the Kyoto or Paris agreement and so forth. And so this is really, we cannot really have it both. Somehow, this big corporation is really getting away with a big crime that they could to destroy environment. Al Gore has said, that our world is really melting. This ice will affect us. That's what the result many of these fires and so forth. In terms of many of this. I guess I'm just throwing that in. I guess my question is that how do we fight this big corporation or this that really contribute to the the dirtying the water, dirtying the air, pollute the environment and so forth. I just leave it as that. Thank you.
Completely understandable, Fernando. It does sometimes feel like a David versus Goliath situation. But where I'm coming from in terms of this bill and in terms of working for environmental justice is that this bill would give a voice and a legal precedent and the ability legally to fight these corporations in a way that we haven't before. Right now, with Alexander v. Sandoval, there was a Supreme Court decision basically doesn't permit private citizens, residents, or organizations to seek legal remedy when faced with discrimination. And this bill would amend and overturn that decision by basically strengthening the Civil Rights Act and specifically Title VI of the Civil Rights Act to prohibit discrimination based on disparate impact. And basically, as of right now, there isn't any legal precedent for private citizens or organizations to sue or to seek legal remedy for the environmental injustice that has been faced in their communities primarily. While I agree that there are a lot of injustices within the legal system and within our government in terms of allowing these corporations to get away with murder, I think that slowly over time, especially now, we are turning the tide in terms of speaking out as citizens. There have been quite a few state and court decisions holding up environmental change. California specifically has done a lot in terms of trying to bring climate change prevention and preventing continued growth that would hurt the environment. And so I think it's important to have a bill like this to give legal remedy to individual people and individual organizations in a way that hasn't been before. But I do agree that there is an infinite amount of more work that needs to be done, but there's always one step that needs to be taken before you can defeat the issue, even if it can feel like you will never. I think
Rose,
that's my optimistic
Rose had her hand up again. Lucy and Fernando, if you could take your hand down too, that would help clarify who still wants to speak. Thanks. So I see Rose and then Stephen Fisk.
Okay, thank you. I just find this so complicated. I mean, the bill, I'm 100% with you, don't get me wrong, but we try to build homes for unhoused people. And immediately the NIMBYs come in and use environmental justice and preserving the environment. I mean, it comes up immediately. I've been very involved in an environmental organization, in addition to, as one of the things I've been done. And I have seen fight over fight. I mean, just to give you an example, there was a Proposition S about building denser housing, and the environmental organization I was involved with came out against it because of the great mansions being built in the outskirts of the city that were encroaching on habitat and affecting the environment. And we got into a very, very nasty spat with another of our groups who were in the inner city, who were desperate for housing for the poor. I mean, I know this isn't your bill, but I just find the environmental justice thing so complicated. And I think as people kind of on our side, I think we have to reach out to these environmental organizations and try and kind of common ground with them to move forward. And the other group that I think we need to really work on, I mean, I was out in the desert, I remember where I was a few weeks ago, and I went past building after building of Amazon type warehouses. I mean, it was just a whole street of nothing but enormous warehouses and trucks coming in and out, in and out. I mean, the environmental impact on the little places near there, and it's a very poor community, it was near Paris, it's tremendous. But they're the employees. I mean, for them, it's, either we will breathe in bad air and live for a certain amount of time, or we'll starve. I mean, I just think we have so much more reaching out to do in those two areas, to those two groups of people. Thank you.
I totally agree. I think it's complicated in terms of human I think it all comes down sometimes to human understanding and human experience. So for those people who might use environmental justice or environmental issues to shut down building for poor or houseless communities, I think that has to do with understanding and even just exposure to those issues, in terms of it can be hard for some people in those conditions, like those NIMBYs, to understand because it doesn't affect them, or it doesn't affect them to the same extent. So I think you kind of have to. I try to come out about it in terms of, well, what do we have? We have many building. There's a huge issue with empty homes and empty buildings that are just being built and abandoned and are not used. And when you're talking to those people who don't want things to be rebuilt, or to be built for those issues, I think a good argument back would be saying, okay, well, what about all of these empty areas? What about these mansions that are being built? Instead of fighting against this bill that helps these houseless or poor communities, you should be arguing and fighting about these empty and expansive issues, like big homes or empty apartment buildings, that kind of thing. Am I making sense? Kind of trying to change how they're going to be approach this issue, because for them, they might not they have not experienced houselessness or being below the poverty line. And so it can be kind of hard for some of them, at least, if they're not willing to have an open mind, they're not willing to try to understand other people's lived experience, to think about people besides themselves, honestly.
I think Stephen Fisk and then Anthony again have hands up. Steve, you need to unmute.
Yeah, I think this is an issue where it's difficult to face and understand the multi-pronged efforts, multifaceted efforts that are necessary to manifest the transition from fossil fuel paradigm to renewables, especially when there are jobs in the fossil fuel that are at stake. And we need to, while the legislation is absolutely critical, we also need to organize on the local community level. And that is of critical importance. For example, I was involved with opposition to the building of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which was a 600-mile pipeline running from West Virginia through Virginia and down through North Carolina. And the pipeline was just, pumping gas to be exported out of Chesapeake Bay to Europe. And the local communities were not benefiting from this, except that the companies like Dominion and Duke Oil were promising local communities, which were poor communities. In one community in particular, it's called Oak Hill, predominantly Black community, they were going to build a compression station in that community. And the compression station, of course, emits toxic fumes and electromagnetic radiation and sound vibrations that are destructive of the environment and of people's health. But they were promising the community to build a really nice community center and give money to the community. And this divided the community because there are people who said, oh, well, we really need this money. We really need this community center. And there were others who said, no, we can't do this because our health and our well-being is affected by this. And so it was a coalition of community organizing of indigenous people and community groups and Sierra Club and lawyers who got together and were able to fight this and defeat the building of that pipeline. And this is what we need to do on the local level to really make, to support this legislation, and have it all work together on this multifaceted level, and to overcome the resistance and the temptation to accept these so-called lavish gifts that are being offered by big oil.
Absolutely. I think it's important, and I think what's being helped now is more and more people are aware of and educated on the environmental impact that that kind of work would have on them, health-wise, but also in their communities. One thing that I think would be helpful would be like a financial incentive to move green, to have green energy, to move away from fossil fuels, or fracking too, in my opinion. And there just needs to be a financial incentive. There needs to be a advocating for, there needs to be more of an incentive for people to be able to live under green energy, not just inspire for that to be had, if I'm making sense. Anthony?
Yes, I want to pick up on what Rose Leibowitz said. Jill, my wife, also had the same concern. And I want to say that sometimes good bills can have unintended negative consequences. For example, we have the CEQA Act in California, Environmental Quality Act. Mm-hmm. And, it is a basically good act. It requires an environmental impact statement for development. But anti-development people, and there are a lot of them in our state, constantly bring this act up to slow down or prevent development, for-profit development. Mm-hmm. When it comes to affordable housing development, it's even worse, because what happens is NIMBYs who don't want affordable housing will insist on environmental impact statement. And that takes time and money. And because of the nature of affordable housing and how difficult it is to get funding and meet deadlines, often the request for CEQA kills a project. And that's exactly what Rose was saying. So I think it's important, and I want to get in touch with FCNL about this, that this bill takes that problem into account. We're facing a housing crisis across the country, and people who have homes and want to, quote, protect their property values, and they don't really care about how that's impacting low-income people. And so, you know, we need more housing, we need more affordable housing, and I don't want to see this bill being misused like the CEQA Act to put the brakes on affordable housing, and to cloak it in the this is about environmental justice. We don't want more affordable housing in low-income neighborhoods, blah blah blah. And so I just have this concern, and I think I feel like I need to contact FCNL and make sure that they're cognizant of this problem, because they may not be aware of it. It's not something that is probably on the radar for a lot of people who are focusing just on the environment. Okay.
Yeah. So Anthony, I just put in the chat my supervisor's email. Her name's Larissa.
Okay.
She might be someone to reach out to, if you want to talk to her a little bit more, because she knows, I know the bill, but she knows the bill, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And I also put a link to the Senate bill text on the congressional website on congress.gov, if anyone wants to see that a little bit more. But I agree, Anthony, that it is a huge issue of in the environment being, I would use the term weaponized, probably. And I don't want that to happen, but I understand that that is something that does happen, especially against poor and low income building and trying to provide housing in that way. But I hope that email is helpful. If it's,
Thank you.
I think I can try and find someone else who might in FCNL, but you also know your own connections in FCNL. So I just thought I'd pass that along. Fernando?
Yeah, well, Ruby, Fernando spoke once already. Why don't we have Doc Ruby first and then back to Fernando? That's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Ruby, you need to unmute. Yeah.
I just because I have seen them.
We can't hear you very well, Ruby.
I have seen, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. I was driving down, I think it was Slauson. I was right last night from the Amundsen Theater, and I looked and saw a train, and these trains have been like sitting there. There's one also on Crenshaw, and I remember when these houses and everything was just torn down, and what the impact as far as the environment and these trains and everything. So when you talk about this bill and everything everyone said, for me, it's a part of my heart when I think about the city, and I think about the and I think about the rebuilding and not building again for and people say the poor people and people with less money and everything, but they don't have a clear purpose. And when the big thing for the city right now is for a clear purpose regarding any of the bills that they put out or anything that's coming up regarding the environment. Because one of the things about Los also is the earth. And when we think of the earth, we think of the quakes. So, you know, I look at all of these things, you know, and I just don't see a clear purpose for some of the building that they're doing, except people are just ready to make money. And a lot of them are getting this profit. It's not being reused. So all of these things, everyone has just been on this call. I just wanted to put that in.
I appreciate that. I think that is a fair concern, and I think there's a quest for profit in a lot of those issues, in terms of putting profit and putting personal or organization specific needs and desires over the needs environmentally and also just housing wise for the community at large. America can, the US can be a very specifically individualist country, where we put community and the good of the community for all on the back burner. And I hope that bills like mine, bills like the Environmental Justice for All Act, will, they're community first. And I hope that more bills like it will increase incentives towards for-profit development companies to help marginalized communities over building for the rich and powerful, honestly. But I just wanted to validate what you were saying. Fernando?
Yeah, I mean, you said a little bit on this regarding profit, you know. It's like here in America, I mean, there's a lot of housing as well, you know, like, you know, we subsidize many of this big corporation in terms of building many of these houses, but it's not affordable to people. I guess their motive is, you know, profit. The same thing with the you know, fossil fuel or the, you know, they're not gonna stop because simply it makes profit for them by trillions, you know, even in the cause of environmental problem in all of us, you know, people are getting sick, people are having cancer and all of this, and look like, you know, it's like, how do you say this? It's like pulling your hair, that there's no solution unless people really rise up, because there's a lot of housing, but yet, you know, because of this gentrification and so forth, you know, being displaced in terms of their environmental housing and so forth, but they're building many of these luxurious building, and you know, it's like, I think that's America, and there's plenty of food, but they rather throw away this food, you know, in the grocery because it's not making any profit for them. You know, simply this is about you live in a capitalist society that you know, all it knows is to make profit. Till people really see the reality of things here in America, then you know, I mean, you know, it's like there's already so many tons of law that reinforce it, but the big or the giant is really getting away with it. They're getting away with murder. The same thing with prison industrial complex. They rather house these people in prison, you know, but at the same time it causes tremendous agony in our community, you know, because we have now 2.3 million people and another 3 to 5 million people in and out in a court or jail system, you know. This is because it makes profit, you know. And the same thing with military industrial complex. If they really want to solve many of this problem, this military industrial complex, we spend $1 trillion a year. That's the open book. But how about the thing that we don't see, that they don't report to us as a taxpayers and so forth. So, we really have to see the reality of this, or else, there is no more, it's like what's happening now in Ukraine and so forth. But anyhow, I don't want to drag the issues, but I'm just saying this is really what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. I think you're making some excellent points, and thank you for bringing them up. In terms of, like, from my perspective, I think there needs to be stronger incentives, maybe subsidization in terms of these for-profit and capital-based companies. The federal government specifically, or the state government, should be incentivizing these companies and incentivizing the building and the work towards and away from towards helping communities and helping low and minority communities from being displaced and moving away from gentrification. And I think we're in the process of realizing the impact that we're having on that kind of issue. Lucy? Did you have a question?
Lucy, you need to unmute.
I wanted to go back to what Fernando said about what do we need to do? What can we do? And I would say that I was in the background, but still close enough to know the Leona wetland struggle when there were scheduled to be buildings such as there are on the east side of Lincoln Boulevard, all the way to the beach. And I remember going to a meeting with 5 people in an apartment in Playa del Rey. And it was 4 years, a lot of headaches, a lot of never giving up. But at the end, the commissioner did not renew the lease on the left side of, on the west side, on the beach side of Lincoln Boulevard. And it is now hopefully being restored. If Margot's chart is correct, that people, constituents have an influence more than lobbyists, that's what we have to do. Just what Anthony's always telling us, asking us to do. And I remember her saying, I have never seen a more passionate or committed people, a group of people than you all, and I will not renew the lease. I was there for that. And it was supposed to be big housing for, condos all the way to the, and it's not, it's open now. So you can still see the sunset if you go down Lincoln Boulevard in Jefferson. But there's so much more work to do. Somebody, I was muted the whole time.
You just muted yourself. We heard you.
We heard you. And yeah, so the chart specifically is saying it's surveying congressional staff on what they think has the most influence on their legislator on when they are undecided on a specific issue. And I think the human perspective can be very influential. And hearing from constituents, especially people who can get them reelected, it is one of the most important things, because to be honest, these people, it's their job. They want to be reelected a lot of the time. And if they understand that, like, we won't, that this is our issue, like, or dependent on what you're working on, that is what you care about, that gives them a very strong incentive to want to be in line with that, in order to be reelected, in order to be to stay in office. I think corporate lobbyists and lobbyists with a lot of money have a disparate impact, but I think they have more of an impact on someone who is a legislator who has decided on an issue, or has large companies that are in their constituency. Like if they have Amazon as one of their like their factories are in like the Silicon Valley, for instance, they might feel incentivized to follow that instead of having those corporations leave their constituency and lose that influence. Michael?
Yeah, I wanted to offer something. Maybe it speaks to it. This is a little bit from my experience in doing work around police brutality and abuse. And I think that one of the things I think would be desirable is to try to cohere different efforts. I'll explain what I'm talking about. I did work around this issue for many years, and sometimes people were all in good faith were somewhat at cross purposes, because the people who are into speaking to the city council and the police commission about reforms were not necessarily cohering their efforts with the people who were out in the streets protesting, or the families that were suffering from police killings, that were interested in abolition, or the people who are doing cop watch projects of direct action to try to monitor what the police were doing on the streets and encourage people to not be fearful of the police, and to actually supervise them and prevent them from carrying out violence. And the parallel I'm trying to draw is that last week we had Antoinette was on this call, who was involved in direct action around pipelines, and went to work, in an area in which people were actually putting their bodies on the fences and so on. And so I think in terms of what Fernando is saying, it's like, I think it is important to try to cohere the strategy around these questions, to understand that it is systemic and it's very, very deep, and that a lot of the people have made up their mind. Here in California, we've had Democratic senators for a long time, and Democratic legislators and Democratic executives, and yet they still bend to the will of the fracking industry and the extraction. So I think trying to bring some of the energy of the direct action and the lobbying and the abolitionist perspectives on some of these things of keeping it in the ground, I think that's what we're trying to grasp for, grapple with, in terms of how those things can reinforce each other as opposed to being at cross purposes. And I did want to mention, I just saw this today. I don't know if people can see this. It's in the Nation magazine, but there's a book out now from Reverend James Lawson called Revolutionary Nonviolence. And so I want to emphasize the first word, because we often talk about the second one here. It's revolutionary nonviolence. He's trying to use nonviolence for a really complete and total social transformation, economic, political. And I think we need to think about that when we think about, legislation and lobbying. How does that actually reinforce an effort for a revolutionary social transformation? And I did talk some last week about what's happening in Canada, because I think that the right wing, unfortunately, is now much more in that spirit in that country of disruptive social protest. They blocked the bridge, to the United States and interfered with the auto industry. The left is not, unfortunately, on that page right now in this country or elsewhere. And I think that we need to think about that and how do we, use sort of all the tools in our toolbox in some kind of concerted effort to really transform this whole system. I think that's what Fernando's trying to get at. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's an important issue to bring up, and an important thing. You and Fernando were both bringing some excellent points to this issue.
Yeah, I was wondering if Antoinette might want to pass you her own contact information because she has been involved. You said you were interested in that Native American connection, and so maybe the two of you can link up.
Antoinette, I have my email in the chat if you want to email me and we can get in contact if that would be useful to you. I would really appreciate it in terms of getting some more, thank you, but more connection. But yeah, I think it's an incredibly important issue, and I'd love to learn more about your work. Also, Antoinette. But does anyone else have any more questions, or should I just kind of wrap up and pass the mic back to Michael? Because
it's roughly the time to wrap up. We have some couple of closing things, closing circle where people lift up people that they are keep in mind of who need some healing, and then we usually have a closing benediction and some announcements of other activities. So thank you.
Can I mention one thing?
Sure, please.
Yeah, with Friends Committee for National Legislation, we have something called Spring Lobby Weekend that is coming up. It's for young adults, so people 18 to 35, which is young adults in Quaker terms. And it is in DC for a weekend, March 12th to 15th. And we are lobbying Congress in person on just immigration. So I am helping facilitate that. So if you know anyone who, you don't have to be a Quaker, you can just be a student or a young adult, or you might, if any of you know a young adult or student who might be interested in getting involved in activism and lobbying, it should be a really fun event. And I can help with financial aid and anything like that. If you all have my email, I just thought I'd bring that up and mention it because it's a fun thing and it's a fun event to be able to be on Congress about an issue such as immigration. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you. Do we have announcements that people wanted to make about other activities coming up? And then we'll do our circle of lifting people up, and then we'll have a closing benediction. Vida?
Yes, because you mentioned Reverend Lawson, his nonviolent workshop that he gives monthly will be held a week from tomorrow, Saturday morning, whatever that is, the 26th. It's on Zoom, and he never disappoints. He's always worth hearing. Thank you.
Thanks. Stephen Fisk? You need to unmute, Stephen.
Yes, on Sunday afternoon, the 27th, as part of our committee on systemic racism, I'm hosting at my house a roundtable discussion on the issue, and we're all invited. I'll be sending out notices in addition to our own committee. We're also inviting people who are prominent in the community and their activism, and it should be a good dialogue.
That's a week from Sunday, and what time is that?
2:00.
2.
2:00 in the afternoon, outdoors in my garden. I have ample seating and sound system if we need it, and so forth. It's not a public. We're not putting this out as a public event. It's a ICUJP community event with some other special guests coming.
Sorry, what was the date again?
The 27th,
And what time?
2 p.m. in the afternoon.
Okay, and do we need your address?
Yes, 635 California Avenue, Venice, California 90291. And I will be sending out an announcement about it.
Thank you, Stephen. I did want to mention, since I am wearing my KPFK t-shirt, that KPFK is in a fund drive. We're getting, whoops. I'm sorry, if people can mute who aren't speaking, it would be helpful. We're getting a lot of feedback. Please mute if you're not speaking. Thank you. Maybe Vita. Vita, can you mute? Thank you. So I was saying KPFK is in its winter fund drive, and the station does need funds. The budget was presented by the general manager this month to the local station board, and we couldn't really accept the current budget because it's actually showing a deficit for the year. And there are changes being made. The fund drive is in a different mode now, so that instead of preempting shows with a lot of pitches for, nostrums and snake oil, they've eliminated that. It's basically just the shows are on, and 2 or 3 times during the course of the hour, the hosts are asking for donations to support the station. So I would encourage people to do that. In particular, also on Monday, the 21st, I'm sorry, conflicts with your lobbying effort, but there's a Pacifica National Black History Month special broadcast, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on the East Coast. It's people, particularly Black broadcasters from all 5 Pacifica stations collaborating for a Black History Month special, and I think that would be a good time to tune in and see some of the new programming that's coming on. A lot of the programming has changed on the station. Dennis Bernstein is on now at 5 o'clock instead of Ian Masters, and I think he's a much more effective voice for peace and internationalism than what Ian Masters was broadcasting at that time. And they have Garland Nixon on and a number of new programs. So if you haven't tuned in recently, I hope you will tune back in 90.7. And if you haven't donated recently, I hope you'll consider putting Pacifica back on your list or even becoming a sustainer.
Can you list where to send the funding?
Yeah, if you just go to kpfk.org, you can click on the donate button. It will take you to a website where you can make a bank transfer or a credit card or sign up. Or if you call in right now, because it is the fund drive, it's 818-985-5735 KPFK, on your keypad, 818-985-KPFK. So thanks. And anybody else? So if people do have anyone they want to lift up and ask for, your prayers, thoughts, and good intentions, this would be the time to do that. Go ahead, Rose. Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to lift up a friend of our family. She just passed away. Her name is Dolly. And a good friend, we know them. And so unfortunately, she passed away a week ago. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose.
I want to mention somebody who's also just passed away. But the main reason I'm mentioning him is because he just died of COVID. So don't throw your masks away too quickly. And he lives in LA. I mean, he's local. I just wanted you to all be aware of that.
Did you want to say his name?
Oh, sorry, Guy, I can't pronounce his last name. Khmer, he's French. Guy, translated into English.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would mention that in terms of Pacific, also that Fernando Velasquez, that people may know, did the Spanish language newscast Informativo Pacifica, died this past weekend, February 12th. He had an aneurysm and was rushed to the hospital, but was not able to recover. And that's a tremendous loss. He was a internationally broadcast. The show was carried up on Telesur and broadcast throughout Latin America, and he's been a mainstay of training people for years in broadcasting. And Judy Marksman, also from the WBAI community, passed away on Sunday the 13th. Her husband was the former general manager of WBAI and a Pan-African activist, as she was for many, many years. And in terms of lifting people up, I would ask people to keep Lawrence Reyes in mind. He is suffering from something called a frozen shoulder, but thinks he may be having some heart issues as well. So keep him in your thoughts. He's, somebody's been in the circle in the past, and a close friend of mine, a member of the national board and a local board here. And Avon and I had a scare this past week. Our niece had a baby, and the baby had to be in the NICU for quite a while, and now seems to have made a pretty full recovery. Probably is going home today, and has been out of the neonatal intensive care, and was able to start breastfeeding, and so. It's probably alarm bell to see that she's develops fully, so keep her in mind as well. Thank you. And I don't think we lined up someone to do a closing benediction, or somebody wants to do that. And also to remind people that if you want to stay on, we do have the ongoing working groups that we have that have combined on the Ending Systemic Racism project. And unless today's a board meeting, no. Say the third Friday. So I'm not on the board anymore. I'm not sure.
I think it's next week, isn't it? Didn't Steve?
Yes, Steve postponed it for a week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will have the follow-up, maybe do a little more planning for what Stephen Fisk was talking about. A week from Sunday, we want to have a little gathering at his home in Venice. But the Ending Systemic Racism, we basically had an outreach and advocacy group, the program working group, and the Ending Systemic Racism group have kind of combined forces on an ongoing basis to meet after these meetings at about 9:30, 9:35, 9:45. Anthony, go ahead.
I just want to thank Margot for her presentation. I think she did an excellent job, and especially getting us all engaged and discussing it. I think we had a really fruitful discussion, and thank you for facilitating us. And we're looking forward to being with you. I hope. I just want to see a show of hands. Who thinks you might be interested in participating on Monday? I see Stephen Fisk. Anybody else? Well, Stephen is excellent.
I think Carol Francis is waving her arms there.
Okay.
Dave Clinton.
Dave, so there's at least three of us, and we'll get you more information. And thank you so much.
Can you give me can you give me your telephone number in case I wanted to go?
Yeah, I'm gonna put my phone number and my email in the chat right now, just one more time, so everyone has it. And I am sending out the Zoom link later, almost right after this, I think. So I'll send that along to everyone. I'm just getting FCNL's official Zoom, so I can pass it along. All right.
Thank you so much, Margot.
No problem. And Anthony, keep me on the mailing list for your guys' meeting. I'd love to stop by sometime again.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
Yep.
I just need to get up early.
I believe if you go to the website icujp.org, there's a place where you can click join to join the mailing list, and please pass that word along to anybody who's interested. Dr. Ruby, did you want to do a benediction again, or I know you did one last week?
Well, I'll be
Which
happy
one?
to do one this
Okay,
week.
How about
Stephen?
Stephen?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, sure. Go ahead, Stephen.
So let's all just take a deep, deep breath.
Just hold on for a second. What time is the lobbying?
Oh, it's 11 a.m. on Monday.
11 a.m.
But we're
Okay.
going to be meeting actually at 10:30 because we have a practice session beforehand. So
Yes,
10:30 till
but
about
the
11:15.
Zoom, the actual meeting is at 11, but I'm opening the Zoom at 10:30 so that we can just go over everything really quickly for anyone who's speaking.
Thank you.
Okay,
No problem.
we'll try to make it.
Okay, so Stephen Fisk, you want to go ahead? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a great discussion today. Let's take some deep breaths and bring in all this information, all this knowledge that we have learned about today and continue to learn about on our Friday mornings. And give thanks to Margot for coming today and teaching us, being with us, and for Avon and her reflection this morning. And I want to talk a little bit about the mending, because in our hearts we need to mend not only the fabric of the outside world, but the fabric of our inside world, where we may be holding some prejudice, where we may be holding implicit bias, where we may be in conflict, where our hearts may be torn apart, and where we need to draw sustenance from that spiritual source of many names and forms, which comes to us in every breath and every heartbeat. And let us open to that. Let us open our minds and open our hearts. And always seek to gather the fruits of this beautiful existence and this beautiful planet on which we live. And go forth from this day and this morning filled with the inspiration and the enthusiasm that we always feel when we come on Friday mornings to ICUJP, and go forth every day to live that spiritual guidance that is universal, that is loving, that is kind, that is gracious, that is giving, and that is of service to humanity and to our world. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Okay, so why don't we, people who do want to stay, please just stay on the call, but we'll take a short break and then we'll come back for the working group. And thank you again, Margot, for your presentation today. And you're definitely welcome back, as Steve Rohde, our chair, is not on the call. I think he's involved with a move. He's moving up to your neck of the woods, Northern California, but he'll continue with us. But he always says, anytime you come in, you become a card-carrying member of ICUGP, and you're always welcome to join us. Antoinette did today, who was here last week presenting. So please feel welcome to return anytime.
Thank you so much.
So Michael, after this, you're going to have a board meeting, or
No, we're going to
Board
have the
meeting's next
working
week.
group. The board meeting will be next week, apparently. So yeah, stay on the line, and we'll talk about the get together that Stephen Fisk has offered to have at his home a week from Sunday.
But Dave, you're still here? Dave?
Thank you, Margot.
He's muted, but his picture is there, so I assume he's still there.
Oh, okay. Dave, I sent you an email, mail in the chat.
I responded.
Oh, okay, good. I didn't.
Thank you both.
So after 4 minutes at least.
Take a break.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Carol Francis. Let's be in touch about both about the writing stuff, but also about the, building bridges piece stuff. I have to jump off for another Zoom, but I can only come to ICJP every other Friday now because of dropping the grandkids at school, but I'll see you soon. Oh, you're muted. Carol Francis, you're muted.
Yes, about the writing. I keep waiting for the ICUJP Writers for Justice and Peace committee or people.
I know. We have to convene ourselves. You can convene us.
I keep trying and I don't get a response from either of you.
Oh, I don't think I got another email, but I think sometimes it's still going back to to the SOLA email instead of to me.
Oh, might be.
Yeah, but yeah.
So what should I send it to? Not SOLA, but
the S.Stauffer.Peace Center director.
Really, the older one.
Yeah, the older one.
Well,
because
definitely, I didn't send it to that one.
Yeah. So I had a UUC one for a while that I was using, and then a Stauffer one at USC, but this is the one I've always had, so I just went back to it.
Oh, okay. I thought the SOLA one being newer was the one that I should use, but okay.
No, that's just more for institutional things, so I don't really check it as often like mine.
Okay.
Alrighty. Be well. Yeah, be well, and we've got to convene ourselves. I know there is a lot of overlap, and if I don't have a meeting in 2 weeks, maybe we can talk after. I know Stephen Fisk was interested, and Lucy and some people. I just can't stay today. I have another Zoom.
Okay.
Alrighty, and Ruby. Yeah, there's a lot of the same people. And Stephen, I wish I could come to your house, but that's when we have our kids group in Sunday afternoon. So
we will miss you.
Yeah, keep me in the loop. Always there in heart and spirit.
Yeah, we're always connected, and I'd love to come. When that can happen.
Yeah, for sure. These we're having 4 in a row in person because we had 4 in a row online on Sunday afternoon. So maybe we can get you for one of those. And if not, we're really, really planning and hoping that we're going to be in person for Peace Camp this summer. And you, with all your great gardening information, we have a OT professor who we're partnering with who's going to do a little small community garden in a yard that USC owns the house over near the shrine. So we'll be doing that as well. So we get a lot of your notes this summer.
Well, I'll be happy to bring my worm collection again.
Yeah, that was really cool. So yeah, let's be in touch, and thank you very much, everybody, and be well. Always a pleasure when we can get together.
Is Ruby on the call?
Yes.
Hey, Ruby. Hi, I've tried to reach you. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm okay.
Good.
I'm on the call.
I called you a couple of times and wanted to outreach to you about Sunday afternoon, the 27th.
Yes, I'm confirming now.
Yeah, great. Okay, wonderful. And you had mentioned that you were having some, physical issues. I was just concerned and wanted to be sure you're okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
And let me know if there's any way I can be of assistance to you in any capacity.
This week, and I said that was one of the things I'm not doing. I'm not using it. Yesterday, I went to a musical at the Amazon, and I mean, it was. I think everybody's talking about Jamie, and it was so much fun because it started out. He was in high school, and he said he just like to wear women's clothes, you know. And so, I mean, it went all the way through until at the very end, people, you know, they had all different nationalities on there and people that were, you know, against, you know, the gays and stuff and everything. And but everybody came together, and it was just fun. It was laughter. There was so much fun in it. So I'm glad I went. I went with a group, Visit Voice of USA. So when I was invited, I said, let me just check this out, you know. But it was the first musical that I've been in, you know, because with the COVID, you know, we haven't been to the theater. But that's what I realized. I'm not moving my body. That's the problem. I'm not dancing.
Yeah, we got to move. We got to get that chi moving through our system and get grooving.
Definitely.
Essential.
Definitely.
Is Jasmine on the call?
Pardon?
Was Jasmine on this call?
I don't see her. It's Lucy, Fernando, Carol Francis, Doc Ruby, yourself, and myself, Stephen. Just 6 of us left.
I was looking for her. I didn't send her the info. Whew. Well, I'm going to do some work and listening while I'm on the call. But you know, when they come with the environment and with this, I mean, this is close to my heart, this subject. And for seeing homes that were being sold and just sitting up there doing nothing because they bought them cheap, and then building big homes way out. So all of that's a part of my heart. So Michael, is the chat still open?
I think it's always open. Oh.
Yeah. Make sure I had these other numbers on here. But I know I won't be on because I already, it was President's Day and one of my clients called me that wanted to take me someplace. So we're going to go to the beach. And I already confirmed it. So I don't think, I haven't been to the beach maybe in a couple of years. And I can't see them just, ooh, these affordable housing projects. Is this going to be a Zoom meeting? You know?
Which
Monday. President, is that a Zoom meeting?
You mean with the Feinstein?
Well, this is it is the Atlantic .com, affordable housing. It's about environmental impact laws in California to kill them.
On Monday, there's a virtual visit to Feinstein's office. Is that what you're talking about? It's a Zoom call at 10:30.
I may be able to do that. But that was that the one from Anthony? Is it the last?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna.
And Margot is facilitating that.
Yeah, I have her number. Oh, but 10:30. I'm not sure what time.
Fernando, are you facilitating this meeting since it's actually a fourth Friday, moved to the third Friday?
No, I'm not facilitating anything.
Oh, well, Stephen, do you want to, since we're mostly going to be talking about the event at your place?
Well, okay. I have outreach to a number of people. I know that unfortunately Steve Rohde told me that he'll not be able to be there. He's up in Northern California searching for an apartment. He sold his home in Westwood, looking for property in Sonoma. And in the meantime, they're going to rent an apartment where he can be by his family there. So he won't be able to be there. But I've confirmed that Louis Chase will come. I had a great conversation with Louis. And Lydia Ponce has responded that she will come. And I've outreach to Aisha Mason. I haven't heard back. I've sent out a number of texts and invitations to a number of people, including Aisha. And I haven't, had a response yet back, but I expect that they will respond and that we'll have a good group of people there, both from our committee and other invited. And I ask any of us on our committee who might know individuals whose voice will lend itself to our dialogue and to the process of building a network towards ending systemic racism and invite them to come. Yes, Carol Francis.
Oh, I was waiting for somebody named Carol to speak up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, how about music?
Well, I'll definitely have music. As a matter of fact, one of the people I've invited, Oliver Brown, is a great percussionist and a very ministerial personality himself, who has performed across the world, and he's a fabulous person, fabulous musician, and he will be coming.
Great.
And we'll have music. There are other people, music people that we'll invite as well and have outreach to. Do you know Mitra Rabar?
No.
She's an Iranian poetess who's been very involved in traveling back and forth from Iran to the United States. Her mother is a well-known Iranian poet, and she's a wonderful musician, and I'm hoping that she will come. She hasn't confirmed yet.
I can do a poem.
Yeah, let's have poetry and music as well. That's good dialogue.
I've got a few poems that I'll, if I'm invited to be on.
You are invited.
Thanks to be on the program, not just invited to come.
Well, the way I'm conceiving the program is that it's not going to be like we're having keynote speakers.
Right.
It's more like a round table, and everyone will have an opportunity to share. And as far as performance or reading of poetry or anything like that, that can always be facilitated in. We don't want to have just dialogue. We want to have some expression, artistic expression.
I'm just offering some of mine.
Great, you're accepted.
Thank you. I don't have to audition.
No. So there are a few people on my list that I haven't reached out to yet. I don't have Jasmine's number. I wanted to invite Jasmine, of course, and she's been on this committee. Is that correct, Michael?
I have Hyacinth's number. That's her mother.
Yes, and her mother should come too. Yeah.
Her Hyacinth.
Still muted. I'm sorry. I kept trying to unmute myself and wouldn't unmute. Rose Liebowitz has often attended these meetings, and Jasmine.
Right. Okay. So we should reach out to both of them. Is Rose on the call now? No.
We're still recording.
Oh.
Michael, do you have Jasmine's number?